So we'll say that this meeting is starting at 6:30. In the, earlier in the year, I came up with this scheme to get some funding from the state to update our master plan, which was last done in 2011. So we're about 14 years out right now. And there was a thing called the HOP grant, which is Housing Opportunity Something or Another. And that is put on by the state to assist towns in developing their master plan. So we have $31,500 grant from the state to do this. There is a schedule of fees and what that does. The whole idea of the master plan is to develop a map for where we see our town now and going in the future. And we're looking at the housing section of it presently. The Conservation Commission is also working on a grant to update the conservation section of that. So our group might end up jumping into that later, but the grant is for the housing section of this. So there's supposed to be a community outreach. There's been several classes that we've taken to develop this. There's a community outreach where we try to gather up from people of the town of all different facets and views about housing and what they see in the future, and finding a balance between conservation and housing and the needs of the people that are here, and the growth of the town. Growth is happening. It's a natural occurrence, and we just there's a statewide housing issue out there, and we're in the state, so we need to kind of pay attention to that. There are people that have housing needs, and house prices in the town. The average house is over $560,000 last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the grant. So if the grant is largely paying for SRPC's work and they're targeted toward housing, the housing is just a very small section of the overall town's character and wants and needs. So did the town vote or agree to accept that funding?
Yes.
And have that drive our master plan? Because it seems like it'll be heavily focused
So this is only
towards
driving the
housing.
housing chapter of the
Okay.
master plan update.
Thank you.
And SRPC is helping with kind of the public outreach and the reporting requirements for that.
Okay.
But they're not going to be participating in a, kind of.
They're not guiding or
Right,
leading.
it's gonna be up to us. They're just kind of, the grant is to help with outreach and things like that.
Okay.
From my understanding, right, Chris?
Yes, so there were discussions in the planning board about this, because the planning board kind of deals with the housing segment of the world in the town, theoretically. Actually, I don't think any other board actually does housing in the town besides the planning and zoning boards.
Zoning.
So, it was discussed about the grant and updating the master plan, and, there are some changes this year in the zoning ordinances that, there's always little things that need to be tweaked and changed and improved, and there's changes in state laws that get passed down to towns that we need to deal with. So we're gonna, the grant was discussed, voted on. Blair from the SRPC put the grant application together. He's the they do planning for many towns, not just our town, so they have like a diverse perspective on things. They will facilitate putting this master plan together. Our group is kind of to do outreach and develop what does the community see, and that was that. So we voted on it, and then it went to a grant, and then the grant had to be accepted by the select board and the town manager. So I do have that here, it's all signed. I have a whole schedule I could send off to everybody that, so everybody could see the grant and what's the capacity of it.
Yeah, I
It's
was
kinda
just
interesting.
curious about that makes total sense if they're funding the housing part. That's great. Not the whole master plan.
Not the whole thing, no.
Right, cool.
But there's
Thank
the Conservation Commission is doing that part of that, so.
Mm-hmm.
The master plan, I think, is important, because it's kind of like our roadmap, and if you look at the statistical data from 2011, the average house price then was about 290,000. And now it's like 560,000. Our average new home in town is 700 and
You're probably starting in the
40,
low
50,
six,
60?
mid-
It's still,
600.
comparatively in Rockingham County, we have the lowest, one of the lowest house rates, compared to like Portsmouth and everything. So we are offering that
Absolutely.
regionally,
But
which
it's,
is
it's
great.
still out of reach of a lot of people in this town. And there are people in this town that, you know, have housing needs certainly, that we can't ignore. Residents.
We have no control over housing prices, though, and we as a town aren't gonna solve the state's housing crisis needs either, so that we need to take that step back and, you know,
Sure, absolutely.
realize it's not our responsibility to try to solve the housing crisis in the state, and that our, you know, influence over the price of housing is negligible, right?
So why don't we just start with some introductions, or let's
Great idea.
continue with some
Yeah.
introductions. You wanna start, or?
Sure, or,
Are you guys just gonna observe, or you wanna be a part, are you gonna be volunteering? You can be introduced, I didn't know if you were wanting to be on the subcommittee, or if you were just for public input, because this is a public meeting.
My name is Susan Mooney. I'm on the Conservation Commission, served on the Planning Board for 17 years, was part of the last master plan update, along with Charlene Anderson and Skip Severance and Mike Rousseau. So I'm here if you are interested in any resources that I might have for you, or perspective, or personal thoughts about navigating your way through this project.
Great. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Doyle, I live on Stevensville Road, and I'm really just here to see what's going on. I'm on the board of Veritas, so I'm interested in seeing how decisions get made, and I have questions about how the master plan is used, I don't even actually know, so.
and I'm Kristen Lamb. We moved to town in 2009, so I've been here for, I think, almost 16 years. I've served on the Nottingham Conservation Commission for over 10 years. My background is in wildlife ecology. I'm also the executive director at the Center for Wildlife, and helped to write the Conservation Commission's strategic plan, which coincided with the town's master plan to be able to carry out all of those benchmarks and objectives. So I'm excited to be a part of this, contribute, and we obviously live in a very special area, and want to help balance and understand what is ours to take on in Nottingham.
I'm Dirk Grotenhuis. I've been a resident in Nottingham for 24 years, and I formerly served as the chairman of the planning board for maybe 12 years. And excited to get back into doing some civic duty. We did a number of things during my years at the planning board relative to master planning. So I'm very familiar with the goals that were set, and tracking them and updating them as we went along. So I'm excited to be here. My profession is civil engineering, so I do have a little bit more of a technical understanding relative to planning and development.
Excellent.
My name is Tammy DeFrancesco. I'm a Nottingham resident. I'm also a real estate agent for Berkshire Verani Real Estate for the past 25 years. We also own Nottingham Sand and Gravel. I've been locally doing real estate in Nottingham in this area for many years, so I'm happy to give input with anybody's questions.
My name's Tim DeBrio. I currently serve on the select board, so I thought it would be good for somebody from the select board to be represented here. I lived in Nottingham for 22 years, served on the budget committee for 4 years, and then joined the select board. And I have 3 kids, and I'm the chair of the Nottingham Youth Association as well, and just want to be more involved in the community.
Dawn Fernald. I have married into one of the original proprietors of the town, so I have a pretty important interest in preserving it. I will also our family owns the Mulligan Forest Conservation easement, so I've been taking part more actively in the management of that. I am by trade a general contractor. My role is more site management, so I actually do been through a lot of the development process. And yeah, I've served on lots of boards and committees in town, so I thought I had a nice, well-rounded perspective.
And town moderator, too.
I know that serves importance.
I'm Chris Evans. I'm a resident here, of course. I'm in the real estate business, have been for a very long time. I'm on the planning board currently, and will be on the planning board for a couple more years. And just interested in what's going on in the town, and keeping it a nice place. I like it here, and keeping it a nice place for all of us.
Kevin Bassett, zoning board for 25 years. Family's been in town since 61, resident for 42 years. I also have very interested in town planning, and I'd like to see a little more future planning in the master planning. I see a lot of trends and historical data, but I'd like to look what might be a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and what do we have to do to meet those goals? That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, Mary Covard. I guess a newcomer to town. I've only been here 11 years. We retired here from New York State, where my husband and I both taught high school science. So I'm bringing the high school science biology perspective and environmental perspective to all of this. And my passion is also history. And so I would like to serve on that part of the committee, the biological part, because of Conservation Commission, of which I'm a member, and the historical part, because I'm also on the part of the Historical Society, along with a piece of history here.
Not that I'm old, but I did know Moses. And Aaron did not have a sense of humor, by the way. I'm Steve Soroff. I'm officially called a resident, and I've been here about 15 years, but my real reason is I love Nottingham. I'm part of something called Celebrate Nottingham Committee, and we're going to be having a number of events such as the reading of the Declaration of Independence, and I want community events, I want community involvement. I'm very proud of, I consider myself a newspaper reporter and a cheerleader for Nottingham.
I'm Drew Stevens. I've lived in town since 2018, so probably the newest person here, I guess. I am a member of the planning board. I'm also an alternate on the Conservation Commission. Professionally, by training, I'm a research scientist, but I currently serve as the president of New Hampshire Turtle Rescue. I love Nottingham, and I am excited to be inputting in this process.
So one of the, I think it's important, I'm just gonna read the first paragraph of our previous master plan, because it's just sets the tone of really what we're going to get into, touches some on what Kevin had mentioned too, of just the longevity that these things are, and coming up with some actionable items that we can tackle over the course of our master plan redo. So the master plan for Nottingham is a publicly prepared blueprint that represents the citizens' view of what the town should look like in 10 to 20 years. And how it is intended to achieve it is how this implementation guide that will, that's actually what this is here, is an implementation guide. And the document, the master plan document, includes maps, charts, and supporting text in arranged chapters that describe the current conditions and trends within Nottingham. This plan also addresses issues of concern such as protection of community character, provides guidance in Nottingham on how to manage and change and manage growth in a manner that is orderly and meets the vision of the master plan. So, it's very lofty, but I think it's important that we understand that this isn't going to solve something tomorrow, but I think we're on a trend We have to look at what those trends are for the next 5, 10, 20 years, and try and capture that with what the citizens, all citizens of Nottingham, what their viewpoint would like to be for Nottingham in that timeframe. I think it's important to do that. So Blair had left a couple of instructions for me, and that is one, create some agenda, which he did. It's in front of everybody. Well, it's in front of most people as their name. So if you have to unfold it to look at it, that's fine. Just an overview. We kind of got through a couple of these. We're gonna need to vote for a chair and a vice chair. Chris has identified himself as being able to take some minutes from maybe today, but maybe it would grow into something else. That's one thing that I'm not really, I talk quite a bit, so I don't take notes when I'm doing that. So if you're a talker, Chris, then
I am, so, yeah.
we'll cross that. We'll cross that bridge. And tonight, I don't think we're gonna be diving into much of the master plan. I think this is just an organizational type meeting. He has on this agenda discussed the status of the Nottingham master plan, the grant. We kind of already talked a little bit about that. And then, when is a good time to meet? When do we wanna, how often do we wanna meet? I guess I'd look to some of the current planning board members, if you guys have any, milestones or agendas that you guys had thought that this subcommittee would be able to, report on. I share that as we go.
We don't currently have any that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Question, do we have an endpoint, in other words, a deadline or something like that?
So, we'll set our own, because what we do, I'm looking at Sue, because this
5 years.
This could be a very long, drawn-out process if you don't stay on top of them, right? And, and that's, with all of these things, whether it's a committee to review the zoning regulations, a committee to review the planning board regulations, those just take time because everybody's a volunteer here. But I think if we just keep some momentum going, it's important. And then later on, it just kind of tends to peter out. So we will define our own deadline. This is actually overdue. So this master plan should have been updated 5 years ago, and it's not. So it does need to be updated, but there's no hard date that I'm aware of yet. Did that answer your question?
There is another part to, the grant, I think runs about a year or more. I don't know the dates, I was just looking to see if I could find the schedule on that. But there is the grant, so it's anticipated that there are 5 or 6 meetings, whatever the frequency is, and that we're trying to do some community outreach to, get a broad perspective. I mean, just in this group, where we have a lot of perspectives sitting right here, but we want to even go broader, what is, as far as we can go. So, like in Barrington, my understanding is they had the Boy Scouts send out a survey, drop it to every house in the town. They got a great response. So we want to look at different aspects of the community, whether it's housing, conservation, what are the needs, what are the stopping places, what are the benefits, it's a lot of perspectives, and then eventually put all those perspectives together to formulate this plan. We already have a master plan, so we could all look at that. I don't know if it's, did they leave a copy here? Yeah, right there. Yeah, so, that the old master plan, and we could probably follow the same format for the most part. I like what you said, what do we see in 5 or 10 years? That, to me, planning boards are very reactive to, well, there's an application, we need to react to it, and we're not often sitting there saying, hey, what do we see 5 years in the future? How many more people might live here? How many more houses might we need? Where could those houses go? What can happen? What's going on right now? So, looking towards the future.
I actually did see that in the last master plan. looking ahead and all the tasks that were assigned to planning board, and it was like updating zoning, knowing that, you know, the flat upland field would probably be developed by now, so looking at wetlands or steep slopes and wanting to talk about that. And I actually did see that, whether that translated to the whole town to understand that those were the charges and that's what the planning board was working on. That might be a question. So informing, if townspeople don't inform themselves about all these objectives that the planning board is like ticking off and working on, maybe that's something to talk about too. But I have a different perspective. I did see the planning board looking to the future and talking about village districts and, you know, transitioning our zoning on Route 4 from residential to commercial to try to, you know, consolidate where it makes sense to drive business to get commercial tax base.
I assume, will that be the first like task for us to sort of go through the 2011 plan and assess where we are? I assume that would be like what we have accomplished. I assume that would be the first step of
Yep.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just
Checking
wanted
off
to
the
vocalize that I had a
Yeah.
Yeah.
different opinion because I did see a lot of
Yeah,
progressive
no, I read the
forward
checklist too
thinking.
and saw a lot of
Yeah.
things that we have done, probably things we still are
Yeah,
on the L for in the long term.
yeah, there's things that the town has done, there's things that didn't do, but there were also things that didn't need to be done, right? Because the trend didn't move in that direction, so it wasn't really to
Right,
do that.
applicable, right.
But, yeah, I think this has been a living document, this implementation guide over the years, but I think it needs refreshing. And some of the goals that have been met are done, so let's make some new goals for that. But yes, I think the idea here would be to go through each one of these, you know, same sequence, you know, that's the housing, natural resources, land use, historic resources, transportation, circulation, economic development, community facilities, energy. So, you know, there's a lot there. Sue, do you remember how long it took from start to finish?
Less than 2 years, but it was over a year.
Yeah.
And we had a professional that we hired with town fund money, who did the pros and did the research, and he would come to meetings and he would present them, and we would parse things and
And
discuss.
we do have Blair from the SRPC
He'll be a great
to
resource,
be the
yes.
very knowledgeable, and he reviews the site plans and things that come in, commercial and residential, and very, very knowledgeable, and he'll be supporting the next steps. He was not able to come tonight, he had a flu or something like this, so it would have been great to have him here. So,
Does this have any time constraints, this housing chapter? I mean, it comes first anyway in the master plan. Is that like, do we have deadlines we have to meet?
So the
for
HOP
this?
grant itself does have reporting deadlines associated with it. That is something that Blair is going to be taking care of, the reporting. And so I believe his intention, you know, was to be here tonight and explain the HOP grant to everybody and the process behind it, because he's kind of taken ownership of that. So I think his plan is at the next meeting, you know, he won't be sick and will be here and be able to tell us a bit more about what's required there and what that'll help with. So while yes, there's a deadline, I don't think that it is a deadline that imposes much of a burden on our getting things finished, because I think what that grant covers is going to be only a part of the whole housing chapter update. So Blair knows more and will be able to fill everybody in next time, I think.
Looking at this master plan, it sounds like the goals are will probably be similar, right? I mean, looking at it, they're still in the same, just in the areas that are yellow that are goals, they look like that's probably not gonna change in a way. I'm just, there's not, at least, if you just read the wording, it's pretty general and pretty lofty and pretty the direction most of us wanna go in.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat, the goals might be very similar, the actions to get to those goals might be different now.
Right, exactly, but I mean, I get, at least if we're building on the past, we've got at least a structure that we don't need a wordsmith to death.
I had a question about that, because in strategic planning for our nonprofit and other boards, we test our mission, we test our vision, test our core values, so is that something that we would do, or as a group kind of agree on? the vision still,
I think we do,
resonates,
I
you
think
know.
we do wanna make sure that, you know, that's something we do early on, because, you know, the community has changed, and I think we all are in the middle of that, and it can change, it will change more. You know, just using the term rural, you know, if the community wants to continue to be rural, we wanna get that feedback from everybody too, right? We want that to be the citizens saying, yes, we want that to be, it's still a rural community, you know, that's got some natural landscapes and all of that. So I think the vision probably is gonna be pretty close to what it is
but we
right
want to
now,
make
but
sure
we
that
wanna
it
make sure it
matches,
is.
yeah.
When it comes to the implementation piece, I mean, you said this is a living document, like who tracks it? Like what was done?
So the planning board had tracked it in the past. I'm assuming they still do.
There's a Word document, yeah, with various things on it that haven't been implemented yet, so
Yeah.
there is some form of tracking going on in the planning board.
Yeah, it's usually, you know, let's just take a look at the master plan, or there are things, and this is usually prior to, any warrants going in, to see if we wanna the planning board may wanna recommend changes to the zoning or something like that, that would fit better with the master plan, so.
The steep slope ordinance that's being presented on the ballot coming up is a result of that whole process that you just described. It's on our implementation plan, and so this was the time that the planning board decided that we'd hold a public hearing and get that checked off the list as well, so.
Yeah, accessory dwelling units was also at one point on this, and, you know, there was changes made to the zoning and the planning board regulations.
Also discussed again at the planning board this past year, but not, you know, essentially tabled for next year. So maybe we'll take it up again.
That status sheet you mentioned, is that available?
What's that?
The action item status sheet you mentioned,
That's this
is
one,
that
Kevin,
available?
right?
We said
I think he
planning
said
board.
the one that they have.
Oh,
that
The
Travis
document
sent
that I
out.
have is not something as organized as this that would have things checked off in any way that would be that useful. But I imagine part of the process that we're gonna do here is going through and checking these off. So, you know, I think that'll be kind of integrated into everything, getting what the planning board's taking care of onto this.
As long as that piece of paper reflects this piece of paper or vice versa?
It'd probably save a lot of work if like planning board can somehow print their status so we can transpose it over as opposed to us trying to do the research on each
Sure, yeah.
individual piece of it.
And I guess going forward, I guess my thought would be is that some more of an active committee that instead of meeting once every 10 years is charging some, to at least track what's being done and then assign out and follow up on the board of selectmen, hey, did you do the things that, and then what's the plan? Because I think that's the challenge with all of the elected positions, they roll off every 3 years, and so I
Yeah.
have no idea what they talked about 15 years ago. at the
And
Board of
this,
Selectmen.
and this document sits on a shelf.
Right.
And doesn't get pulled down very
Even
often.
like CIP, I hear them talking about things on CIP from school board that I was like, wait a minute, that was on the CIP when I was on the board in 2008. It was supposed to be done in 2010, so it
Maybe
would be
that
nice
could
to
be an
see.
objective on here is to institutionalize those benchmarks and create tracking and reporting mechanisms for
Yeah.
each board.
Document's great if it had been filled in, like
Right,
status of it by
right.
somebody all along, that would save everybody work.
Just an idea.
And some of these may end up, you know, being
It is a
homework for some of the board members that are here, the planning board and the zoning board of, you know, or the board of selectmen, you know, did this happen? And maybe that's homework, or go back to your board and find out, and if it hasn't, then we'll go back to this committee and figure out what the next charge would be to do that.
And another thing is how to, like in the institutionalizing, like, does each board have an annual meeting where they have to review it? Because I know some board members that come on don't know that we're working towards things from the master plan that was developed, so they are like, why are we doing this? Or does this make sense for the town or whatever? But it actually was already created, so maybe there's like a stipulation in here for an annual review for each board.
So typically in the summer, the boards, there's a joint meeting of the zoning board, planning board, and conservation commission. I wonder if that might be a good
Yeah, that's cool.
opportunity, since we're already kind of trying to hold those meetings typically in August, if everybody's getting together anyway, why not?
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
What did we accomplish? What are we planning to tackle for the next year? And then updating these with that.
And then the public hears that because they're watching the meeting, so then they get reminded of what the master plan is and what the objectives are, and they hear what the next ones are for the next year. So when warrant articles come out, it's not like out of nowhere, it's understood what the strategy and reasoning
Probably
was.
including something in the town guide that comes out every year.
Right, yeah. Right.
So some of the goals on here that we might, review what has happened in the past and see what the outcome was, and did something need to change or go differently or whatever. This, a lot of just community input and outreach that we first need to do to gather a lot of perspectives. Once that gets collected up, Blair is gonna be assembling this into, this chapter. He's got a big task, and he's done this for several towns already, so this is in his wheelhouse.
There is a survey out there, right? I got a survey. Was that just
That was
from this
for the
board,
regional
or-
planning
Right.
commission.
We sent that out. Did
and
that go to all residents, or who did that go to?
Yeah.
It
the one-
got to the town, people on the town boards, it's on the website.
I
If
got
you're
it.
on a board, you got
Oh,
one, I got
okay.
one.
I was like, how
Um,
do I get one?
But that's for the whole county, and the whole region. It's
Yes.
not just for Nottingham.
Right. So, once this whole master plan is redeveloped with some goals and outlines, then nothing changes at all with the planning board until, the planning board sits and goes, well, here's a couple goals and outline, ideas, and then those have to be formalized into whether it needs a zoning ordinance to be changed or updated, or, like they changed the commercial zone from residential to strictly commercial, a few years ago, before my time, and, maybe that needs to be further changed to bring in more commercial, because very little commercial has come into the town, and if we're hoping to have that on the tax base, maybe we need to talk about what's gonna happen in the commercial district too. Anyway, these get discussed at the planning board level based upon this roadmap or plan, and then they get adopted into an ordinance, and then it gets put on the town warrant article. So if there's any change, it's next March, sorry.
So I did want one clarification with the survey that's out there. My understanding is that it's regional, but they're gonna break it down for Nottingham, which is why it's important for Nottingham residents to complete it, because some of the questions are very specific to our town. And so I think that information is gonna lead up to Drew to be able to present to us what the town people want and what resources they're using and all of that stuff, so.
I always wonder about surveys like that, because if it is regionally and someone's like, I wanna have more housing, I wanna have more access to hospitals, I wanna have whatever, like, in Rockingham County, that's different than like, I want this in Nottingham.
Well, it asks you what town you're in. And so I think that's where he's gonna break it. This is my understanding that was explained to me by a member of the planning board, is that the survey will be broken down so they can give the residents of Nottingham that completed the survey what they wanted for that community.
Community of the
Of the
of
town,
town.
right.
So people are answering for Nottingham only.
Right, but then, I mean, there are questions in the survey that are asked more broadly, like how far do you travel to work and things like that, but again, it tells you where they live. So again, I could be wrong, I mean,
It feels different than a pointed survey
Yeah.
for what does Nottingham want
Yeah,
for its town.
the RPC is really good at the data, right? So pushing things out.
Yep.
They have data, they have transportation data, they've got, probably some housing data, they've got a lot of data that they do. So I think that's where we lean on them for that input. And if we want a survey to get pushed out that's very specific, then we can get them to push that out for us. That's, and it would be up to this committee really to, what are those questions? What are the survey questions?
Yep.
And they can refine them such so that they can get the right data back. Because sometimes you ask a question and it's just people can drift off and it's just maybe not, you're not
I think
you're not
it
gonna
would be
get
better
information.
if it were a more focused, like, survey, because I took the Stratford one, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't apply to me, well, that doesn't
Right.
apply to me. And so it might frustrate some people that we would like to get more positive feedback from, because they may get turned off partway through, like sidewalks
very
and your
wrong.
septic system. All right, we have a septic system, but we don't have a municipal septic system, it was talking about improving the infrastructure of that. And a number of things that if somebody's clicking through it, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah, I agree.
We talked about that at the planning board, about that survey, and it's like, the transportation, so do we need busing and, you know, trains, and like, no, but, you know, maybe another town in Rockingham County does, you
I
know.
think it was
down-
too a little bit of like how close would you desire that access? Not saying like let's put a train station in Nottingham, but like it would be nice if I had access to this. Or I think it was kind of targeting. I imagine that's the component they'll take from the small town pieces of it anyway. I hope it wasn't saying I want a train stop here.
I want more sidewalks.
I want more sidewalks. Yeah.
So how often would everybody like to meet? Once a month, once every 2 weeks,
Once a month is better for me.
Yeah.
once a
Same.
month?
Yeah.
Sooner the better, twice a month.
Are you
If you're gonna
experts?
do
What
it,
would you recommend
do
for
it.
those who have done this before? Once a month, twice a month?
Well, don't let it languish, because
That's the-
people
that's
will
the thing.
wander off.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we're gonna,
Suggest every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, if that works into a schedule.
Would there be subcommittee meetings after the main meetings, just to keep things moving forward?
This is
or
a
would-
subcommittee meeting, right?
We are subcommittee.
We are subcommittee.
All right, subcommittee,
Subcommittee.
Yeah, like homework, like task force, like
Yeah, right,
create a
yeah.
draft
that I have an
survey and
action
have
item
everyone
I'm
review it.
supposed to attend to,
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to work with these two gentlemen on that action item.
I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page, that we're only updating the partial portion of the housing part of it, right?
no, it's the whole.
Yes.
The whole thing, the whole.
But the
We're
first
starting.
chapter that we're dealing with
The
will be
grant
the
was
housing
for
chapter.
affordable housing.
Right,
So
so,
it's,
It's
The-
not
the
affordable housing,
subcommittee
it's
will-
what does housing look like in Nottingham?
What do
right.
you want it to look like?
The subcommittee will last beyond the housing chapter update, you know, I don't know if all of these chapters will end up getting updated during this, you know, process.
But out of the grant, what was approved, I don't.
The housing.
Housing
chapter.
only.
Okay,
And that's
what I
why
wanted to
we're
make sure. Okay.
tackling that one first. And then the second one likely will be the natural resources chapter, because the Conservation Commission currently has funding for that and is also applying for grant funding to further, you know, update that part.
So that
as
will be the
well.
same committee for everything?
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
master plan update committee, so we'll just take things in order, you know, as we decide that order, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and
the
right now
bite
it's-
we're trying to take off right now is strictly the housing part.
Right.
For this particular grant, but there are several sections of the master plan, and they all do integrate and tie into together, you know, the history part of the town, the conservation part, there's several aspects of it. So, one of the things in this training thing that I've been going to is, they talk about community outreach and different groups of people, whether you're doing your outreach to elderly or to young, or, you know, different perspectives, so that you get a lot of different perspectives to put this into the whole. There's a lot of different people in town, different ideas.
I was like thinking about that, and it seems like our town pages get so much activity versus in-person meetings. I mean, I've been going to planning board and BOS and other meetings forever. So like, what about even creating a survey on those town pages of like a quick Survey Monkey, it's 3 answers, like what type of survey would you be most inclined to participate in? Direct mail or hand delivered, online via our pages, or coming to a meeting or vocalizing, something like that.
And that's like.
A
where
survey
they-
of a survey,
Yeah,
or
they
maybe we
just-
just do all of them, I don't know.
They just did the SRPC survey, and I don't know what percentage return they're getting on, and how they delivered that. And we could certainly generate a mailing list and send a survey, I mean, it can be a paper survey to every household in the town. It can be the postcard with scan code with your phone, QR code, and pop on this schedule, and we might get a higher percentage results from there. But somewhere along the way, we have to formulate what are the questions that we're asking, and what is, that's, I think what Blair's part is gonna be to kind of put that's something I didn't understand when going to the classes, and they had people at these classes that they had, you know, somebody from Nashua, it's a big town, and then somebody from, I don't remember the name of the town, but I never heard of it, and it had 1,500 people. And then they had a medium-sized town that was about 5,000 people, like our town is 5,300 or so, 5,400. And then another, Littleton, I think, was the other town. And they all talked about how they, you know, had different engagements, and it was kind of interesting. What kind of housing do you see in this town? What kind of needs are there? So Blair did, on the application, he did kind of a lot of factual data about the town and housing prices rising, and, there's a lot of
Looks like this is
statistical
from
stuff.
2000 and 2009 was the most recent. So that was a concern for me. I guess if we're gonna base decisions, we should hopefully have access to something
Current data, yes,
post-economic crash and post-COVID.
yes.
The, workforce has certainly shifted so much post-COVID.
And just even trends, like today, in New Hampshire, the average first-time buyer home buyer is 39 years old, and there's a downward trend in New Hampshire, 42,000 less students in the state, because people are not, buying a home and having kids, and our school enrollments are down, and this, our population, we're the second oldest, state in the country, and it's just a trend. And so housing needs might be different. Maybe if 30% of our population is over 60 years old, then maybe these people aren't buying a 4-bedroom. Sorry.
You'd be shocked.
I'm just saying maybe. I don't know for sure, right? But maybe these people don't need a 4-bedroom, 2,800 square foot, colonial on 5 acres. Maybe they would like a little ranch house on a half acre, and that would be enough.
Maybe
So-
they don't want to live in a place that is a 30-minute drive to a hospital too. So when we collect data, I want to make sure we're
Sure.
understanding why people are making choices and not filling in those narratives for ourselves.
And we should look at, the availability of services and impacts. I mean, that's certainly, as a planning board, you certainly consider that. Well, is this gonna be an impact to the school? Is this gonna be an impact to the emergency services of the town? So, somewhere along the way, we should have somebody from our, like with the joint boards meeting, we had the fire chief come in and talk about town needs. There was DPW guy came in, zoning, planning, and so there's a lot of input from a lot of different parties, and we should look at that and say, hey, is this, if we want to put housing in a certain place in the town, let's say, does that make sense? Does that put an imposition on the town or undue burden on the existing services? So there's a lot of things to consider. It's not just, there's no simple answer here, for sure.
The age statistic too, I have read a lot about the generation, like the millennial and Gen Z, that they prefer not to own a house because there's a lot of data around not wanting to maintain that because they have a different lifestyle.
I mean, my 4 children.
But-
So I'm just saying,
I'm like having heart
if, I don't want to just take a data point and make up a story of,
But then they can't afford
they
to
can
rent
only
anything,
afford it.
That's the
No.
problem.
So.
I just want to make sure
Should
we're
we gather,
collecting
then
data.
do we think 3 weeks? Should we start with the first task of how often we feel like we should meet out of the gate?
Yeah, so, well, we do have to trade off with, because planning boards have meetings Wednesday nights,
So we're
all
pretty
time
much-
right now.
Right, so if we did every other week, starting from this week, it would, well, I guess
In
it's,
between.
If we did every 3 week, it'd be starting to conflict with planning board if
Right.
we kept it Wednesday nights. Is Wednesday nights okay?
Okay,
As long as
again,
it's the first or the, I actually also have you have second, your meeting second Wednesday of the month, planning
I
board?
have,
It's-
okay, I have a.
second and fourth, I wanna say?
Yeah.
Or-
I also
Yeah, I
have
have
second.
I have a standing obligation on Wednesday night, on the second Wednesday, but on the
Like
fourth
Okay, that's
Wednesday
planning board.
is free.
I think we all have a second Wednesday, most of us. What is?
So I would say,
It's every-
again, if I had to
Mondays,
choose,
right, for a select board? Yeah.
first and
If
third.
I had to choose a time, I would
Zoning
go
is
for the
Tuesday
second,
or Thursday?
the fourth Wednesday
Tuesdays.
of the month.
Second,
Well, that
Fourth
will
Monday would
conflict with planning board.
That would conflict.
Yeah, that would conflict
So
with
it has to be the
planning
first
board.
or the third.
How about a Thursday?
I could do the
less
third
popular.
or second Thursday.
I have
Popular.
events on Thursdays a lot that I have to go to.
If we do a first or third, does anyone have conflicts on a first or third Wednesday? It's just the second and second seems to be popular, so we
The
could stick
third
with the.
Wednesday, I do.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we push to the 1 month from now, so the first Wednesday of April,
April 2nd.
April 5th? No,
Okay.
April 2nd. March 5th's today.
All right,
That way, we'll
Yes,
get
sir.
Blair here
yep.
and be able to kind of dive a little bit deeper on what the idea is around the housing. And then we can, start,
So we're talking about what time on April 2nd?
April 2nd is 6:30 or 6, or what's,
I would be in favor of moving it to
6,
6 if that worked with everybody else.
I will not be here. Just,
Just that day or at 6 o'clock?
just that day, that week I'll be.
is everybody okay to move it to 6?
6 o'clock on April 2nd.
Yeah.
Second,
Yes, and we need to, we need to establish a chair and a vice chair today. So, anybody interested in the chair and the vice chair?
I nominate Dawn.
I'm happy to do either and none, so
Derek, you were so
I-
great as planning chair for so long.
I'm happy to do it.
I can do either or none as well.
So you get
You're
it,
gonna do secretary,
one or
aren't
the
you?
other.
Or didn't you volunteer to take notes already?
It's a life project, you know?
Chair, vice chair, and secretary already?
Sure. Chair, vice chair, secretary.
I second it.
Unanimous.
So, okay, everybody okay with chair, vice chair, and secretary?
Yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Which one, which was which now?
It might change next time, so.
Who is secretary?
So chair, Don's vice chair, Chris is secretary.
Slightly.
Okay, that all makes sense to me. So again, what I like about what you're doing is you've got, it's not your first rodeo.
Yeah, yeah,
No, it's not,
No, that's very helpful, actually.
yeah. No, you're the.
but it's going to be a rodeo. Rodeo of some cats, you know?
Nailing jello to a tree, as we call it in our house.
So, we should just plan on doing 1 hour unless we really get going and Blair's time gets an hour and a half. I think respectful of everybody's evenings, let's not push it past an hour and a half. Is that agreeable?
That's good. I think in terms of maybe, God forbid the word homework, but what we're gonna do on April 2nd is focus on housing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So we should then review this type of reading in preparation for that.
Do you want to be vice chair? 'Cause that's perfect. Yeah,
I nominate Steve.
Should we go down these today? If there's 6 or 7?
let's do it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's just take a quick review of what the goals were for the housing. All right, so,
Well, I have a question before okay, I read the housing, I was just a good little doobie and read that was on the town website. And a lot of that data is like 2011,
Yeah.
earlier. And so if we're gonna start making housing decisions, we really need updated data. I know we can get a holistic view of what's going on and what our goals are here, but I think if they're building like 20 houses a year versus 300 houses a year and what they're like, really is going to influence our thinking. Is there a way we could have access to updated data?
yes, there, Blair has done that. I have amazing access to a lot of housing data, being in the business I'm in. Tammy does too. Way too much data, really. It would be good to kind of have an overview of, you know, what we've done. One of the things that we might look at is how many building permits were issued for new homes over the last 10 years, which I don't think is put together yet in my mind. So, you know, we could look like, somebody could check with the building department and say, hey, can we get a list of how many new homes every year? We could look at the planning board stats and we could say, well, here's 4 subdivisions that were approved in the last year or the previous year, and look at, you know, upcoming housing potentials.
Looks like 2015 was maybe the last time we looked at how many units per year.
There's, you know, market data for pricing, what,
So who would you task?
Who would-
Alana? Would you write the deal?
Well, maybe it makes sense for everybody to review the housing chapter, keeping that in mind. You know, when you're reading anything in the chapter that has to do with data that was collected when this chapter was written, you know, maybe highlight it, something like that, so that when we come here next time, we'll have a list of things that we might need updates on, that we need to know more information before we can start, you know, making recommendations or anything.
Or does Drew even have that stuff just already at hand?
He may have, Blair may have.
I mean
that
Blair,
stuff.
I'm sorry.
Blair may have a lot of that stuff already organized that he was going to do tonight.
Right, right.
I don't know that we need to spend too much time on it tonight.
Right.
But I would say, I don't think we're gonna get through the housing chapter in one meeting.
no.
So when there's other things like outdated data, then we'll have to say, yes, we need that before, really, we could even go to the citizens and say, what do you guys think
Create
about
a good
this?
survey.
Okay, just in terms of, very concrete, in other words, this document is from 2011,
2011.
so that's important to frame up, as we read it, we realize it's historic more than.
Most of the data cited was from 2000 or 2009.
Well, this is what we're hoping to update.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're updating.
Right, that's, but again, so that as we look at it, this is old news.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, because Nottingham could expect, I saw
Very old.
2015.
Yeah, very old.
Very old.
So if everybody's okay with this, I will send the actual grant application to everybody on email. Does that work to communicate like that? Okay. So this does outline some local statistical data. It has a list of goals. It talks about outcomes and deliverables. So one of them, gather data on housing permit subdivision development patterns. So that's part of our whole list of goals and tasks.
Right.
I can certainly go through the master plan and, housing stats and pull up and put together housing stats and send that off. It'd be pretty easy to do, but some of this, how many housing permits we had,
Chris, is Nate gonna be part of this from UNH?
pardon me?
Is Nate gonna be part of this?
Nate?
Nate from UNH?
Oh, okay. So, no, he's not, unfortunately. And one of the other people that works at UNH used to live in town, Sarah, I don't remember her last name, and she moved out, and she's also running at the New Hampshire UNH. So we have UNH, and there's several
New Hampshire
state
Housing Authority.
agencies, several state agencies are all kind of helping to put data together to help towns across the whole state and
Help
you know,
them what?
help them
Yeah, what's the goal
develop their
of that?
master plan and figure out where they're going in their future.
There is another, I saw this, I don't know if everybody else saw this, but there's another thing coming up.
Just because there's stakeholders that have different priorities maybe than Nottingham does, so I just want to understand what the
So there's a webinar.
goals are always.
On that, on the foundation today, the connectextension.org for the towns. It says a webinar addressing the housing crisis collaborative approach to building local solutions with the New Hampshire Housing Academy and the Invest program.
But we
So-
haven't decided as a town that we are the ones to address the housing crisis, is my point. We haven't asked the town if that's what we want to do for Nottingham. So I caution utilizing data, information, goals, priorities from someone who's coming from that perspective, because that's not necessarily Nottingham's perspective, and we have to ask everybody in the town if that's
These
what
are-
we're charged to do.
What Tim was bringing up was that Nate lives in the town, so is a stakeholder, he's interested in what's happening in his town as well. And all these people that are here and that we're gonna outreach to, do care about, they live in this town in a house somewhere, so housing is a need for every person that lives here, basically. And some people's needs change. Some people don't need a big house, some people downsize, some people need to upsize and get a bigger house if they have kids. Everybody's needs change, and housing sizes, how the trend of housing over the last 13 years, since this master plan was done, has changed. So we're looking at, what dynamics are there that might be different.
I
It's
just
nice
don't-
to
Yeah, I
focus
think-
solely on conservation, but there's housing needs for people.
Yeah, I think it goes to some of the priorities of what our community really wants.
Yeah.
And I'll even use low-income housing as an example. We don't have really the workforce in our community that utilizes a low-income housing,
Or the resources to
or
support
the
the
resources to
needs.
support them, so.
So workforce housing has the limitation is that they can make pretty good money. It doesn't mean that they're on welfare.
No, I'm not saying.
I don't think
it's
she was
low
talking
income.
about that at
Still,
all.
it's not even really low income. If you look at workforce housing,
Yeah, those are
it's not
definitely
low
two
income.
different.
Those are two
Those are two different things, and we're not talking about, we're talking about the priorities of
Yeah,
the,
just
Well,
priorities.
one of the things that I found interesting reading through the housing 2011 version was how many houses there are and how many are empty and how many are, what they call it, manufactured housing, and how many of them are sitting empty.
A lot of that
And
was
they're saying,
seasonal.
well, maybe they're the camps at the lake, but not 100, that there were a lot of empty houses. And so to go forward with a housing plan, just starting with this, is kind of misleading. Because I really think we need to know how many manufactured homes are there, how many homes are sitting empty, what is the character of those homes that are sitting empty? Are we gonna be like Long Island, New York, where you buy a property and tear the house down and build your new McMansion? What is it that we're driving for?
right.
Yeah, they're doing that already.
I just-
But at least it's a lot.
I feel like I'm like trying to articulate that I don't want us to be reactive, because there's 1,000 needs in our region and in our community. There's opioid crisis, there's housing crisis, there's food security crisis, there's abuse and equality crisis, and it's not necessarily the town of Nottingham's job, or we have to listen to understand what the town of Nottingham wants for our town to tackle, and what is realistic with our capacity, with our, resources, our access to resources, what our school looks like, what we have for elderly. It's like we use Ready Rides and other nonprofits to serve our elderly right now. We don't have resources that serve elderly. So I just want to make sure that we're not reacting because there's hot rhetoric about different crises for our town.
I think maybe then, really what you're saying is like the start is this, because right now it says our goal is to provide housing choice opportunity for age and income diversity. I mean, I guess our first thing is, are we reviewing that goal? Is
Yeah.
that the goal of that sentence?
It's a full it's a redo of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is 2011. It's up to this community to guide it, right? To figure out if these goals are even applicable anymore. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's new goals. There are. So let's start to define those.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
That exactly, that we probably, it was premature. We actually have to redefine our mission statement for housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the flip side too is though, everyone in Nottingham may say we don't want more houses in Nottingham, but that's not necessarily just because they don't want them new, they want it to stay the way it is, but that's also not a sustainable goal either. So it's not our job just to be reactive to that as every bit as much. We do have broader responsibilities too in creating this master plan. The state's never gonna allow us to stop housing or.
And statistics of who had to leave the town because they couldn't afford it or because they aged out, like those would be great statistics to gather too.
Or people that,
And how many
have
kids are
kids that
living
want
in
kids to
it?
have
Yeah.
a house,
Yep.
but they
Mhm.
can't.
Right.
I mean, most houses we get asked to build now, everyone's asking for ADUs and it's for their kids or for their aging parents. A lot of us are taking, a lot of us are sandwich generationers.
55 and older communities do we have in Nottingham?
What did you say?
0.
We still have it.
Oh, that's what I thought.
So,
Okay, you're in real estate, right?
Mhm.
What trends have you noticed?
So we'll go over that next,
Now you're firing with us, Sheriff.
let's save that for the next time, all right?
Good, because again, I think
I
we're redefining ourselves, which is good.
I agree.
So we should review this and figure out the new data we're missing in order to really.
I would love to have that before the next meeting, if Blair has it.
So Chris, you'll send us what the grant is for and what it is
I'm
intended for?
yes,
Yeah,
this,
and you're gonna share
this
that.
grant kind of talks about some issues. It talks about the community engagement. It talks about the scope of the work. It's good, and I'm sure Blair would have gone over this had he been here, probably much better than me just leafing through it. I have read it once. And then, it talks about like step 7, the draft preparation of this, which he's gonna be, putting together once we gather all these community input. So, we have a lot of outreach to do to a lot of different parts of the community to say, where do we see our town in 5 years or 10 years from now? Where do we see it now? Are there problems now that we need to deal with? Are there problems or, forecasts? And the town is growing, it's a natural thing. It's, in the last 10 years, it's grown by about 589 people, I believe is the number I saw on a recent survey thing. And there were 101 new houses for 589 new people, and there's a list of how many kids were born. So all that data is out there. Housing prices, how many houses sold, the price of new construction, how many, I can put some of that together. I can actually follow the old master plan, because some of it was put together by a realtor. I know that, because I looked at the way the data was, so.
What I'm gonna do
Chris,
is,
I think
I'm gonna
Also
ask Blair.
to do that.
An
That's exactly
objective.
what
Yes, I was gonna say, or he might have already done it.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I'll
We might be
follow up
getting
with
ahead
Blair
of
and I'll ask him to do a pre-preparation meeting summary before our meeting.
Right.
So that we're not just showing up and Blair's presenting us with all this stuff.
Right.
So
I
that
thought
we can
all-
absorb that before the meeting.
Perfect.
I thought all those tables made a lot of sense as far as informing choices and decisions. So if we could get the updated numbers on that type of data, I think that would be an awesome start.
Just to give you a huge historical perspective, in 1950, the population of Nottingham was 540
540?
people,
Hmm.
period.
Wow.
How many houses?
2.
Couple meeting houses, really.
And telephones didn't reach the lake until the 70s.
Damn.
We good to adjourn?
Excuse me, can I just ask?
Yes.
I don't feel like we can commit to the regular meetings, but are these open to people?
Yes.
Public meetings, yeah.
Yes, they're public meetings.
Minutes will be on the website, on town website, or?
Yeah, so I think it's on the planning board page, there is now a separate section for this subcommittee, so all of the minutes and any activities coming out of that should be posted to that subsection. I don't know exactly where it is, because I think it was just maybe created in the last couple of days, but
I got
there
a
will be
link
a
to the-
central place
I
to
got
get
a
that.
link from Blair today, how to find that.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's in the email.
and again, this is a volunteer board, so, nobody's, shouldn't say that, everybody's committed. You know,
I'm a psychiatrist, be careful how you use that word.
we'd like everybody in attendance if possible, but we all have lives. If there's some other commitment that has to happen, just let me or Dawn know, and that way, you know, we can get you the information if you're gone or gonna be in the next time, so
Again,
just let us know.
what's useful in this organization, maybe it's already out there, is for us to get a list of who is in this and contact information.
Yep. Yeah, we'll put that together. We already have everybody's email from Blair's
Right.
announcement. So we'll get that put together and put a little contact list. Okay? Everybody on the second? 6 o'clock.